everybody, it's me again. Wanted to talk about the 1981 classic The Fog from John Carpenter. It's besides Halloween and The Thing, which are my favorites of him. These are one of his better ones, in my opinion. This one, The Prince of Darkness, Big Trouble in Old Chinatown for some weird reason, and then The Mouth of Madness. So those are the ones that I really like. And then Halloween, of course. I mean, if you can look a little bit back here, that's a lot. The rows of all Halloween merchandise, and here you've got a row with all the things of the things of the thing, you know. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sick with the sore throat and phlegms, fucking phlegms. Now, the movie starts out with George Buckflower telling this tale about this ghost story about the clipper ship, the Elizabeth Dane, and its crew. They wanted to colonize a patch of land 2 miles from a colony that was already Antonio Bay. But that patch of land was Antonio Bay's patch. So Captain Blake, the leader of these colonies, these colonists that came from an island called Tangier Island, they wanted to pay for it because he was a really rich man with a cursed condition. He apparently met with the priest who had the most saying, and 5 other people, 6 people were like the councilmen, you know, and one of them was a priest, and he met with Captain Blake. He was loyal, he was kind, but it did not prevent him from the priest looking away from his face, because they were basically lepers. So he could not, even as a man of the cloth of God, could not have, he didn't want it on him that he had a leper colony 2 miles away. So what they eventually did was, they knew they had a lot of money. They purchased that ship, the Elizabeth Dane, and what they did was, they wanted to lure them into in a rocky area, but luckily this unearthly like fog came rolling in, although the priest said God didn't have anything to do with this. So the fog comes in, and they make these 6 conspirators make this giant bonfire as a beacon, so the ship would go towards the beacon, but of course it hits this patch of water, which is called Spivey Point, that's full of jagged rocks and things. The ship's hull is just completely torn, the mast breaks like a twig, and everybody drowns. Now, and they recovered the gold the next day through the bodies of Captain Blake's men. Now what happens, that was the story that he was telling. He was telling it for a bunch of kids, and he was telling this because apparently weird things start to happen in the witching hour between 12 o'clock at night and between 12 and 1. So a lot of weird shit starts to happen, like cars going off, glasses bursting, chairs moving in somebody's home, ghostly things. And what happens is at some point um, we get introduced to the first fog attack. So the weatherman, played by Charles Cyphers, a lot of Halloween alumni in this movie. Um, he says he calls up Adrienne Barbeau. She has this light tower. I mean, she pimped it up to be a radio station. And he says there's a fog coming in, and there is a trawler that's probably gonna be in the fog called the seagrass. And then she says, okay, that's good for 10 seconds of airtime. She's well, it appears that she does not like her job, but she loves the view because I mean she's at the end of the world basically. You can call it the end of the world. It's like seeing oceans and oceans of miles of oceans. I mean that's pretty beautiful, and the landscape she has to walk 1,000 steps towards her towards her light tower. And she calls up those guys, and those guys don't see the fog, but then they see the fog and they say, okay, let's start the engines. Then the fog is very quickly coming in, and then they see this giant, like, pirate ship, which is the Elizabeth Dane, next to them, and the anchor falls in the water. And the generator is filled with the fog, and it blows up. So they don't have light. They go on the deck, and what they see are these people standing there with like pirate clothes, like back in the days of colonists, and they're looking at it. And, what's that? Who are you? And then apparently this scene was originally just them being killed, but you didn't see it, but you heard it, and then you see them falling on the ground. That's it. Now John Carpenter wanted a little bit more gore, although not a drop of blood, but more horrifying. Whoa, Jesus, gnarly moments in there. And he said, "I'm gonna redo that scene." And then eventually you see one of those guys getting a pirate sword straight to his back and out of his belly. Then another guy gets a knife through the throat, multiple knife stabs, and the guy with the sword falls on the ground, and the other guy is being stabbed to death multiple times. Then this other guy in the cabin, he hears somebody get going in the the steering cabin. He goes, somebody's opening the door, and he says, "Al, is that you? Are you wet or something?" Because he hears squishing sounds. But apparently these colonists, these ghost colonists, they're constantly wet because they were drowned, even if they're on a ship. So he takes him, and that's a creepy scene. It's all dark. You only see his eyes from the guy, the driver. And you see the colonist taking this like needle-like weapon, spike, and he spikes both his eyes out. So it's pretty gruesome scenes. I mean, you don't see the thing going in, but you later on, when the coroner is examining him, you see his face and you see the eyes, and then we get the story about our people that are in the movie, and you've got a lot of famous actors. You got Janet Leigh, who plays Mrs. Williams. I'm guessing she organizes this entire party, this millennial party, and it's all for this stupid one statue that's big as a TV. That's the boat the colonists came in. Then you have her PA. Her PA is Nancy Loomis. Nancy Loomis is Annie from Halloween, and she plays like Annie. She plays this bitchy character, but you know you have she has your back. You have her. She'll give you. She has your back. You know she'll help you, protect you, and be worried at the moment it's necessary. But she's bitchy and whining and things like that. So and that was Annie too, kind of, and I like that in her. Um, Also, a fun fact: the guy who gets his eyes gouged in, his his name is Dick Baxter. Now, Dick Baxter, that name was so familiar. Now I remember that when Annie and Laurie Strode are driving for their babysitting job, they're talking about a prom, and Annie makes this laughing, maybe kind of joke. Dick, Dick Baxter would go out with you, probably saying Dick Baxter is like a nerd or something, and then she says, I would rather go out with Ben Tramer. But that's where I remember Dick Baxter. So they used that name for the guy who gets his eyes gouged out. Uh, so then so you have that pocket of people. So they work for the council. Okay. Then you have this other pack of people. You have Tom Atkins. He's driving at night, listening to the radio, listening to Stevie Wayne. Stevie Wayne is an Adrian Barbeau. Um, Stevie Wayne, Tom Atkins sees this beautiful woman, and who is this beautiful woman? Jamie Lee Curtis. Now he of course picks her up. Tom Atkins being the man's man, but there is something anatomically incorrect with Tom's face. He has no mustache. He has no stash, no facial hair. It looks weird. It looks creepy, weird, and I did not like it. He had that not no stash shit also in Creepshow, the wraparound of Creepshow, the first Creepshow. But then I think he listened to the people and said, "I'm Halloween 3. I'm gonna put the stash back on," and he kept it on for the rest of his career and his life. I mean, he doesn't. It doesn't work. He looks so anatomically, and his face then like puffed. It's weird, like a marshmallow head. But even then, he's still the man's man, and every woman wants to fuck him. So Jamie Lee and him are making this. They're joking with each other, a little flirting going on, and then he says, "Great, I'm jinxed and unlucky." And then she looks at him and she says, "We'll see," referring that he is probably gonna be lucky that night. But then a stone or something falls through his window. His windows break. But that's again, like I said, during that witching hour, that the trawler got hit by the fog, by the colonists. The town goes crazy, and of course we see him later then in bed with Jamie Lee Curtis, and then he gets knocks on the door, and you see this colonist hand going up with this sight, and just when he wants to open the door, the clock strikes 1 midnight and bursts, and he opens the door, and the, the colonists, I always want to say a pirate, but the colonist is gone. They can easily be pirates because they have these bandanas around their heads and those puffy pants. I mean, but okay, they're colonists, people from that time. Now, again, so you have pockets. You also have the priest, Hell, played by Hal Holbrook. Again, another famous man. All horror alumni characters. he's called Father Malone, and he's the only descent of these six conspirators. He's the descent of the priest who talked to Captain Blake. So he finds his journal of his father, and he learns that the entire celebration is a travesty and that we're honoring murderers, basically. And he drinks a lot, so he's making it a little bit more dramatic when, when the Janet Lee of the council comes in, and because he was doing the benediction, but now he says, he's telling the story, met with Blake, he told the story that they killed him, they killed them all, but it's hard to live with, and eventually, although it's hard to live with, apparently the priest took all the gold, melted it in this giant golden cross. He did not know it was there until the end, because it was behind the book. Also, a nice note is at the beginning, the guy who works a little bit at the church is John Carpenter. That was funny. Yeah, it was long hair. Also, Adrian Barbeau as a disc jockey plays multiple records of the Coupe de Villes, that's the name of the band of John Carpenter, with I think Tommy, what is his name? Tommy Lee Wallace and Nick Castle. Those three guys. Also involved with Halloween and such. Nick Castle was Michael Myers for some for some scenes at least. Okay, so eventually the movie, the fog comes back, goes straight into town, and then starts killing people. The first kill is Adrian Barbeau's son's babysitter, Mrs. Cobrooks. She gets killed, the poor soul, and then so Nick, that's the name of Tom Atkins. He's getting so. I mean, okay, there were no cell phones, and the power was out. The only way of communication was through a radio. So they put the radio on of Adrian Barbeau's, lighthouse. Stevie Wayne was her name, and she's saying where the fog is going, because she has an eagle's eye over the town and can see where the fog is going. So she's, and I'm thinking to myself, if you see the fog going towards your kid's house, would you take your car and get the fuck over there? Because she risks all, because after, she doesn't know if he's saved. She doesn't know if Tom Atkins heard her, right? Then she says, so I'm sorry, I'm not sure what the name of the son was. I'm sorry, I need to be here to warn people of the fog. And then I'm thinking, you don't need to be there. You need to be there with your fucking kid. Stupid bitch. Because so then she starts to warn Charles Cypher character, Dan, I believe his name is, the weather guy, and the fog is coming towards his station. He gets killed. They're knocking on his door, and he's thinking as a tough guy. He goes in and he sees nothing, just fog, and then he gets a hook in the throat and pulled into the fog. And luckily, like I said, Tom Atkins heard her cry to help her son, and they almost got him. The sixth and last kill. So they only need one more kill. They killed the three fishermen, they killed Mrs. Coburg, and they killed uh, Charles Cyphers. So if they killed Kid, they had their 6 kills. And they're always gonna come back because the town is cursed every 100 years. Now, personally, um, at some point, they so Mrs. Williams and then her PA and Nancy Loomis, they're going towards Mrs. Williams' house, but then they see the fog. They also put on the radio, and they hear Stevie Wayne saying, "Don't go there, don't go there," and the fog is coming up Chestnut Street, then Market Street, and eventually they all meet up at the only place that's fogless at that point, the church. So that's the only moment when all the characters except Adrian Barbeau come together. They go into the church, they see Hal Holbrook, he's like almost passed out because he's drinking wine. I see Tom Atkins taking the bottle of wine like a man. He throws it against the wall and he pulls the guy into the den because that's the only sort of safe place, although there are a lot of windows, but okay. Then of course the colonists are bum rushing the church to get in, and of course Stevie Wayne, Adrian Barbeau, she thought she was safe, but then she sees a rolling fog coming towards her. I think the fog knew what she was doing, so it's not a stupid fog, Stevie Wayne. It's not a stupid fog. So she eventually she hears them knocking in, and they come in and they break the door down. She goes up to a roof. Eventually she gets attacked. She gets a hook in the shoulder, but it goes with her, and then you see one of these colonists' face, but it looked like so weird, green from algae probably, and then all holes and these worms crawling through. They look like they were underwater for a long time because when she hits him with the hook, and you see water, kind of water spouting out. So eventually she almost gets killed, but what the priest does, he finds that golden cross. He goes into the main room, of the church where everybody can, and he says, "Here's the gold, Blake. Here's the gold. Take me and the gold." So you see Captain Blake for the first time, who was, by the way, played by Rob Bottin, the special effects guy from The Thing and The Howling. He takes the cross, and then we see the face of Captain Blake. You can see his face kind of clearly. Got a figurine here too, but I'll put a picture on the I'll put a picture here on the screen. You see his face, and then he's holding on that cross, and it starts to glow, and I think he wanted to take the priest and the cross with him, but then Tom Atkins jumps and takes he takes the priest and jumps and pushes him away. So Blake only has the gold, but even then they disappear on Adrian Barbeau's roof. So she's saved, and then you get this scene where everybody's standing there in a line, and Tom Atkins like putting on so Tom Atkins is the man, but he needs to have his stash. He needs to have his facial hair because it looks like a fucked up melon or a fucked up marshmallow head. But even then, he's the man. So let's talk about the pros and the cons of this movie. First, the pros are great music, creepy location, Antonio Bay. it looks very secluded and grimy because the water is really rough on the bay, and like I said, it's not super big. It looks creepy if you see it at night. It's yeah. Then the actors, all great actors. The t- creepy scenes, that scene on the boat that I told you, but there's another scene when they find the boat and they only find Dick Baxter. And the coroner says you can see his face of Dick Baxter, you see the two eyes missing, but he looks like he's been underwater. And the coroner says Dick Baxter died at sea. He said, "Remember those two girls we found 2 weeks in the water? That were 2 weeks in the water, drowned. He was, he was, he swears that Dick Baxter was longer underwater than those two girls. But Dick Baxter, it still doesn't compute because the doctor saw, the coroner saw Dick Baxter at the supermarket 3 days ago. And he found him on deck, right? But it was all salt water, like the gauges were destroyed by the cold temperature, and the beer cans they were drinking, there was salt in the beer, and the generator was, the deck was dry as a bone, but the generator had salt water on it. So probably a residue from the colonists. If they kill you, you're basically, you become this drowned corpse. And then you get this creepy scene when he's talking with the coroner, and Jamie Lee Curtis is waiting in the coroner's room with the body. You see, Tom Atkins doing like this. It's getting cold in here. Don't you feel it? And the coroner keeps talking. He's not aware of anything. Jamie Lee Curtis is also getting cold, but that's because when a ghost enters a room, right? It gets cold. That's one of the ghost facts, right? You see the body coming up, you see the body coming towards Jamie Lee Curtis, and I thought the first time I saw the movie that he had a scalpel in his hands. He had something in his hands that looked like a scalpel, and it was gonna jab Jamie Elizabeth is her name in the movie, but he does fall next to Jamie. We get her scream queen scream, and eventually we see that it was not a scalpel but a pen, and he drew 3 on the ground for 3 more bodies. That was a cool scene. It was a really creepy scene. So they had a lot of those scenes in there. Now, going to the cons. The cons are, first of all, like I said, with Stevie Wayne, I mean, how the fuck would she know that her son is saved? She could have get to her fucking car. Now, the problem is she had to go up 1,000 stairs to her car, and it looked like the lighthouse was pretty isolated from the town. Pretty far from the town. Would you risk it and try to save your son, or just try hoping somebody hears you, knowing that everybody's at this failed basically party because the power is out, everybody, it's all dark, everybody has torches, and because that's what I don't get. If the fog was going all over town, why didn't it go to that party? You know, where there are like hundreds of people from the town, just the fog rolling up. There's a good guy or woman. We got our 6 conspirators, because that's the thing too. Nobody except Hal Holbrook was a descendant of these 6 conspirators. We also get that scene that I forgot to say, that they come back because he says, "Why not me, Blake? Why not 6?" Then they come back. They're standing there in the dark, and then behind him we have Blake with his sword in position and hacking his head off, and then the movie completely ends. And then before that you have this segment of from the thing from another world, like watch the ominous report. Watch the skies. Keep an eye on the skies because you might see a flying saucer. And it might be the end of the day, something like that. And she does something the same. She says, for the people in the city watching over the Black Seas, for the people and women on the ocean, watch out and keep safe, and watch out for the fog. Watch out for the fog. Same deal, same kind of deal. So it's ominous premonition. But like I said, okay, that was stupid in a way. She just, because she's the only one who doesn't connect with everybody. Whoa, the characters aren't fleshed out. You've got all these great characters, but they're barely fleshed out. Let's see, from Mrs. Williams, okay, we know she's the party planning committee member, and her Nancy Loomis plays her PA, okay, and that's what we get from her. She's also married with one of the fishermen who died on that trawler, I think Hal, who's a pervert because he would like to fuck Stevie Wayne. He said that. So, because they say, aren't you married? Not happily. So he kind of deserves to get a blade through his stomach, through his back. I mean, maybe not, but he's an asshole. His wife is concerned like shit, and he's saying that shit. I mean, come on. And then you've got Tom Atkins. The only thing I know what he does is he fish. He's a fisherman. What do they fish? Like, because the trawler itself looked like a regular boat. I know fishing because I been fishing. Fishing from a boat, but I also visit these trawlers with nets, or the trawlers that fish with hooks for swordfish. They didn't have both of those. It was a regular boat. So where was the fucking fish? Did they eat it? And like I said, then he says, I'm going to go to Ashcroft with Jamie Lee Curtis, because her idea, what was Jamie Lee Curtis? She's a woman, apparently very rich, from Pasadena, and for some reason rich, she should have a car, but she decided to hitchhike, which is so dangerous. Doesn't matter which country you are, if you're the hitchhiker or the person who picks you up can be a fucking sexual predator. I mean, you don't know. So she decides to hitchhike her way all to Vancouver, Canada, but she then, of course, when she fucks with Tom Atkins, she kind of bond together, but she's like keeping it open. When she get the hell out, she can get the hell out. So they're going to Ashcroft, a guy who owes Nick a favor. We don't know what kind of favor. We don't know shit about these characters. Shit. Jack shit. We don't know why Adrienne Barbeau bought that lighthouse, because she looks unhappy. I know she came from Chicago before this, and then moved to this small community, buying a Dishaki tower. I mean, you don't really know they're not really fleshed out, these characters, and you don't. Okay, the priest. I think the priest Hal Holbrook is the most fleshed out character of the movie. I think so. I think so because Tom Atkins is there to fuck Jamie Lee Curtis basically, and then looking for the seagrass and talking a little bit with the coroner, and then being the action hero and saving Adrian Barbeau's son. Then Jamie Lee Curtis is there to be the hapless lady in distress, saved by her hero, stashless Tom Atkins, who likes to fuck him. And then we have Nancy Loomis, Annie from Halloween, being the bitchy brat she was like in Halloween, which I didn't mind. And she's here in the same. She's the same in this one, but it's okay. And we got, you know what I mean? We didn't have, so many people in this movie, so many known actors, and they had a limited time, and they didn't flesh it out. And that's my biggest con of this movie. They did not flesh out the characters, and they didn't spend enough time with the characters because they had so many things going on. So that's the problem with this movie. If they didn't had that, maybe connected with these other characters a little bit more and talked a little. I'm not sure. Maybe then that would be better. So I'm giving this movie still a 6. I would give it a 5.5 because I think that's a major problem, a major issue in this movie. But although all that, I think it's still a great movie. It's a creepy movie. The soundtrack, the location, the acting is good. What we see is what we get, and it's good. But like I said, I liked a little bit more information about certain characters and about the characters in the movie. So that being said, watch it, give it a 6, subscribe, like, comment if you have something to say about this movie, if you like it too or not. See you next time. Bye bye.